Hello! So, last week I published the very simple glow ink farm. After I published it, Boyan actually had an idea that he tested, and he managed to make the farm even simpler. It's not as performant as the one I published last time. I think it's worth the effort, or it's worth the less effort to make a much simpler farm, because the selling point of this one is that it is something you could build relatively early in your world. So, to remind ourselves what we're talking about, this is a glow ink farm. We are farming glow ink by having guardians shoot the glow squid. This is the perfect conditions for glow squids to spawn, and we are in an ocean monument, which is just below here. And the glow squids and the guardians spawn, and we're getting ink. That's it. But we can simplify it, and we can do this almost live. So I will refer the hairy details to my previous video, but the modifications I would do would be to take the roof that we have here and just remove it. No more roof. And of course we're gonna need a roof, but only over the fish tank here. So we can start a new roof here. We put the other corner of the roof just here because let's keep it minimal, because this is supposed to be a very simple farm. And I will use tinted glass because it will make it easier for us to see what's going on. But of course, since I'm advertising this a little bit as a starter farm, use anything, stone slabs, like cobblestone slabs, just so that they are bottom slabs so nothing spawns on them. Even though things spawning on top here isn't even a huge issue, but it will reduce the number of guardians, so just use slabs, it's cheaper that way. And then another thing we do, like the blocks here are black stained glass. I will replace them with tinted glass, but of course, if you're on a budget, you would use stone, I guess, cobblestone, wood, anything that doesn't let light through. And there's another thing we need to do that wasn't necessary on the previous farm, and it is that we need to build in the hoppers, because the hoppers are leaking some light in, as we can see here. If I go in here, we see 6, 7, 4, 5 skylights, and it's coming from the hoppers. So if we cover the hoppers up like this, and then at the bottom here as well, that should get rid of all the skylights inside here. And as we can see here, there is no light in here. So I have to cover up the hoppers on all the sides. So I'll just do that now. And on this side here, we don't even need to cover all the way. It's enough to just have 5, 6, maybe 7 blocks in this direction. You can just check it with F3 and just go on every edge here and see if you get any skylights or block lights. And we're not getting anything right here. And on this side, we are getting it because I still haven't covered this one up. But I will cover this one up, and we can talk about the further modification this will require. So both sides are now covered up, and just verifying that all the light levels are correct. There is no light coming in anywhere. In the middle is of course completely dark, and the edges here are fine too. So this is the first modification. This is an obvious modification, but the next part is much better from the point of view of this being a relatively easy to build farm that you can do early in your worlds. And that is, we don't need the spawn proofing. As you can see, the water spreads the way it would be naturally in an ocean monument. We don't have to drain any bit of the monument, and this is really, really smart. And that's it. This is the way you would build the farm. Over the top of the ocean monument doesn't really have to be exactly in the middle, as long as all the spawning areas are over this bit. So the ocean monument starts here. This is inside the monument, and this is outside the monument, at least from the point of view of how the guardians are spawning. And you can just build this box anywhere. It might actually be more convenient to build it on a corner if you need that, because there might be fewer guardians attacking you while you're building it, which is definitely a concern. But you build a box like this. The dimensions are just the same as I used in the previous video. Just look at that, but it is 14 wide because that allows the water streams to spread nicely. The water streams are spreading perfectly and ending right here. And the length is, I think, 34 blocks, but you can experiment here. I don't think the dimensions matter that much. It could be bigger, it might be better, but bigger might also be slightly worse. I am not sure. 34 seems like a very good number and pretty much the best of all I've tested, but maybe with this new layout you could play around and try other dimensions. Doesn't really matter. You could make it definitely smaller because nobody needs that many glow ink sacs anyway. But over the farm, in the exact same spot as previously, so the same spot is in the over more or less the middle of the farm, and 185 blocks up, as we can see here. Looking at this block is 185, so when you're standing on it, your position is at Y level 186. And this is critically important. For why the AFK spot needs to be at this exact Y level, I refer to my previous video, but the very, very short version is that this makes some part of the farm not spawnable, and that means that any mobs that float into those bits of the farm despawn, and that is actually very good because that gets rid of the axolotls faster. At least that's my hypothesis. I am not 100% sure if that's true, but it definitely helps. It raises the performance of the farm by quite a lot, and I have tested this version as well, and it definitely helps. And now, let me just do something like this. I do counter reset. I will run this for an hour and we can see what the numbers are. The numbers are not as good as the previous farm, but are almost as good. For so much less effort to build it, I think it's worth it. And while we're measuring the performance, let's just take a look at this, because it is quite fun to see all the carnage in here. And as you can see, the farm works just like before. The glow squids spawn in here, they get shot by the guardians. The same thing with axolotls. The axolotls spawn in here and they get shot by the guardians. But you might actually notice something interesting, which is what makes this farm quite good. And it is that there are no squid in here. The squid very rarely spawn in here, and that's because we left so much space out here. You can see all the ink sacs here and all the squid spawning outside are preventing the squid from spawning on the inside, which means that the guardians, they waste less time shooting normal squid and spend more time shooting axolotls and glow squid. And that means that even though some guardians spawn on the outside, as you can see here, those guardians, one, they despawn relatively fast because, well, the despawn sphere ends around this area, so if you can even see where the guardians, when they float out or float to the bottom, and they despawn immediately, so the area outside is relatively clear of guardians and doesn't build up too many guardians. Another thing is also that if the guardians are having a roof, which they are having here, they don't actually spawn that much, so the water out here doesn't really have that many guardians, so most of them are staying inside the farm, and yeah, the squid are staying outside. So this is performing quite good, and we don't need the spawn proof. So let's just wait for the results and see where we end up. The tick warp is done, so let's see the damage. I already know what the damage is. Well, it's 2064, but it was actually much lower. Like you can see that the last one I did, which was just no, that one. It was about 1950. So yeah, we have lost about less than 20% of the performance of the farm, but for so much less build effort, I definitely think it's worth it to just make it so much simpler. I would almost be tempted to call this a ridiculously simple glow ink farm. I should reserve the ridiculously simple term for things that are actually ridiculously simple, but this is on the edge of being ridiculously simple. There might be even simpler glow ink farms that are still performing good, but I think this is close. But anyway, that's all I have for you today. Thanks a lot for watching, and have another glowing day. Bye!